Hello, I'm Jason Paul. I'm sat here on the 26th of August, it is today, and Bank Holiday Monday in England. So I hope that you've had a lovely Bank Holiday weekend. I'm sat here in my hoodie today, starting to feel all cozy because it's autumn, but this hoodie actually has a massive stain on the front of it, but I won't share that with you. Now, I want to share with you a brand new series called Masterclass, and guess what? You're listening to the very first episode of it right now. Now, what are Masterclass episodes? They are designed to talk about one particular topic in detail where we scratch below the surface. So the normal episodes of Soul Sync, obviously, I talk about people's backgrounds, their stories, their experiences, but these particular episodes are focused on a particular subject. So most of the time when I do a masterclass episode is when I get a previous guest on to talk about a certain aspect of their experience, and I've got some really good ones coming up for you. But the very first one is with Christine Morgan, who is an international medium and teacher. She's been on a previous episode and she has 32 years of spiritual mediumship experience and she travels all over the globe. She lives in Australia and she even opened up a Spiritualist Sanctuary in Perth, of all places. I literally the other day watched a documentary about Perth and it is so beautiful. It was the one where Miriam Margolyes travels over and it was just fascinating. It's on BBC iPlayer at the moment, but what a lovely city. Anyway, Christine's coming on and she is talking about on this episode with me, let me say that again, the psychic to spirit pathways. That is the psychic to spirit pathways. So we're going to talk about that journey of going from being a psychic to spiritual development and connecting to the spirit world. So I've done a great job at explaining that, haven't I? So you're going to enjoy this episode anyway. We're really going to get drill down on this one particular subject. So I really enjoyed this conversation and I'm so excited to share the very first masterclass episode with you. Do remember, if you want to watch the episodes rather than listen, you can go over to my YouTube channel where, if you're watching, hello again. Anyway, without further ado, my masterclass episode with Christine Morgan titled The Psychic to Spirit Pathways. So, Christine, firstly, a massive warm welcome back onto the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you, Jason. It's lovely to be invited again. Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
It's lovely to see you too. Thank you for coming. So, you've joined us today for one of our Soul Sync sessions / masterclasses where we're going to talk about the psychic to spirit pathway, which I must say, I'm very excited to talk about this subject because, as everyone knows who's listening to this, I am trying to develop my mediumship myself. And Christine, you are a wonderful teacher, so I think we're going to have an amazing conversation. So I guess, and by the way, I will say this from the start, if you haven't listened to Christine's episode all about her, go back in time and you can listen to Christine's story. So we're not going to delve too much into that today necessarily, because this is all about the topic in hand. I guess to start off with then, Christine, what do you mean by the psychic to spirit pathway? Because some people are going to think, well, what does that mean?
Okay, well, what I share with you, obviously my own experience and how I work and where I come from as my base foundation. And I'm a great believer that you should have, when you're developing your mediumship, a really solid foundation of intuitive psychic understanding. And the majority of people, in fact, to me, to be psychic is to be alive, right? We're all got that inert psychicness, attentiveness, intuitiveness, that link that makes us aware of something, even though we might not know what that awareness is. We've all got that functioning within our psyche. So once you come to understand there's an aspect of that with the psychic, your intuition becomes stimulated, the psychic faculty, because it is just a faculty of mind, becomes stimulated, and that can lead to the majestic role of the medium. However, a lot of people dive into development classes and mediumship not even thinking about the psychic. They just go in, they learn how to sit, they learn how to do meditation or sit in the power, and they think, they're not getting a contact, they're not getting a link. oh, well, what is it? I'm just not touching it. When actually, some people are actually working very psychically and don't realize because they don't understand the psychic realm. So the pathway psychic to spirit, I believe, is a fundamental role in every good medium's development. And you do have to understand the difference because you can be, as I say, thinking you're trying to get a contact to the spirit world. You're getting no's all the time. Your information's not making sense. And if you don't understand the psychic intuitive levels of self, you could totally disregard it. But your mind might be being stimulated psychically, and you could be picking up information on a psychic level, which leads you to mediumship if you want to. So to learn about mediumship without psychic understanding, I actually think is quite fragmented. I actually think that it's a piece missing out of some mediums' work because they, even though we all love to work for the spirit world and we love to be part of that communication, we actually can work brilliantly psychically as well with our own minds.
I think when you talk about kind of people jumping into that, yeah, the way you talk, it almost sounds like it's a modern day issue. People wanting to jump straight in, maybe back in time, back in a few decades ago, it seemed like that was a necessary part of the development. But I think, do you think that's because of the nature of the world we live in now, with people just having information available at their fingertips? Is that why a lot of people are skipping this part of the development?
Yes, I do think people are skipping parts of the development, really. Truthfully, if you want me to be honest, absolutely.
Oh, yes. I want you to be as...
I'll call a spade a spade. And I do, years ago, I remember even my own dad, when he was developing, they never talked about the psychic. They went to circle, they sat in the power, and they waited for spirit communication. And by all means, yes, we have brilliant pioneers, brilliant mediums of yesteryear. Of course we have. But the thing is, we do know a lot more about the psyche of human nature today. We know more about psychology. We know more about the psychiatric processes of the human mind than we've ever done before. And so the psychic work wasn't really focused on a lot. But if you listen to some of the greats, like if you listen to Gordon Higginson, he talks about how important the psychic work was. He talks about the awareness of the psychic realms. And so a lot of old mediums, they just went to circle, sat in the spirit, and they were able to learn communication. But today, I believe everything's so fast, Jason. It's gimme, gimme, gimme. I want. Get development, get up, get on the platform, do a reading, open a business, did it. And it's like this roller coaster. And sometimes you just have to put the reins on the horse, right? And you have to go, what's really taken place here? And I'll use myself as an example. I remember when I first started and I started demonstrating in England with my dad, and I used to sit in his development circle in England sometimes in his old church, Spiritualist Church. He was a president for 40 years. And I'd get up and give something thinking I was with the spirit world, and he'd say, that's psychic. That's psychic. That's not from the other world. And I would go, what? What are you talking about? So there's this misunderstanding with some people, not everybody, of misunderstanding the filters of information that flow through the medium's mind. So everything has to flow through our filters, right? All your sensory perception comes through your filters. So when it's flowing through your filters, it will pick up aspects of the psychic. And this is why at the beginning, you pick up a little bit about the sitter and maybe just touch the spirit world a little bit. Then you start talking more about something in the sitter's life or a memory of them, or you're able to describe things for them, and you can place it with the communicator because you can sense the spirit there. But the mind is not stable enough to actually hold the contact of the spirit world. So the person carries on with the information thinking it's all from spirit when actually they've delved into the psychic realm as well. So to understand the difference, I think, is paramount. And psychic work is exciting. I mean, you can do fantastic stuff with psychic work. I love it. And I do a lot of psychic work.
I love it too. And do you know what? It's only up until recently I've realised that I've been a psychic for a very long time without necessarily realising it, because I've been in the business of selling people. I've been reading people for years and years and years. You know, I can tell you what someone's, what's gone on in someone's life, what their fears might be. But I didn't even realize I was a psychic. I just thought I was very good at reading people. Um, I think part of this is my perception, but I think there's a little bit of sometimes snobbery from mediums towards that of psychics, that they've almost got one up. They
I
might
agree.
see that they are better. Oh,
Mm.
I'm glad you
Right.
agree. That's just an
I do
observation
agree.
from the
Yes.
sidelines.
It is. People, there is sometimes people, I mean, there's an old saying, psychic's not a dirty word. And the fact is, a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's not from the spirit world, that's psychic. But it's still something fantastic that you can use your own psychic ability or your own depth of intuition to feel into information, and not just top surface information. You can really delve deep into the layers of the soul of the person. And so people who do that, and it does happen, which is quite sad, really, I think it's their own ignorance. And I think that it's also a big red flag that there's chunks of their education missing.
I guess to go back then, right? So lots of people are going to be listening to this who are thinking, oh, I'm dabbling in mediumship, or I want to get kind of started. So obviously, like you've kind of explained, the reasons and the rationale behind developing the psychic, to, start to get on that pathway towards, communicating with spirit. I guess first things first, how does someone start to develop their psychic
Well,
abilities?
to be
How?
quite truthful, to start anything, you've got to start with developing the self. And so what happens is we're developing the self all the way through our development. It doesn't stop. It doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it. You never get to an end result of developing the self. The soul is always in a development motive. And so you have to, I feel that you should always have some level of training in self-awareness. You should know what makes you tick. Know how you physically, emotionally respond to people, to comments, to situations, to types of people, personalities. You really have got to look at your own inner action. And when I say inner action, I mean, you've got to look at your own inner responses to situations and people, because if you don't have any self-awareness, how can you be aware of others? You've got to
Yeah.
have a look at self, right? So I would also recommend that you do work on self. And then when you're working with the psychic, to stimulate that. I mean, there's 1,000,001 different exercises people can do. People play with cards, they use rune stones, they use focus exercises for clairvoyance. They can do lots of different things with psychic tools, and all of that stimulates that psychic mind. And all that psychic information that's floating in the ether around people's auric field, oh, she wears a red top. They drive a blue car. They love cats, and oh, they eat cheese and onion crisps. All of that is what we call the psychic fluff. It's all there. It's all those little bits that are floating around that persona that is being presented in front of them today. But when you're working at a very true, a basic, intuitive level, you're able to go beyond all of that, beyond the top surface persona, into the layers of who the soul really is. And that is where healing comes around, self-awareness comes around, and that's where true guidance comes. So,
Mm.
if somebody comes to you with a problem, you might feel a solution and psychically say, oh, yes, you've got to sell your house, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to look beyond the reasons. It's like looking beyond the evident, looking beyond the evident, not evidence, evident. Something that's very evident. Okay, well, look beyond that. Why is that person responding that way? Why do they react that way? What's going on with them? And so the healing of the soul comes along when a true intuitive uses their psychic ability and intuitive awareness to really feel the person, not just play with the auras and the color of the aura or the symbol of something. All of that's very relevant, but you want to go a bit deeper into it, And
Mm.
so if you can start off when you're reading people and practicing psychic development at getting all this stuff out of the way. Yes, they're a secretary, they drive a red car, they collect black cats. Fabulous, good, you're on the ball. But what else about them?
Yes.
Because what else goes on? I mean, this persona, this personality we act out in day to day, is this really us? Is this the true us? What goes on behind the mask of that, right? Really, what makes you tick? What makes you think? What drives you to want to communicate with the other world? What drives you to want to understand healing or be a speaker or philosophy or spiritualism? So there's a lot involved, and it unravels as you develop.
It's interesting because where I'm at with my mediumship at the moment is I am dabbling in doing readings, mediumship, definitely not for money, you know. So, that just gives a whole nother level of expectation. But I'm now getting quite confident in my psychic readings, and I'm able to do, I feel so, for instance, I had a man the other day, I didn't know anything about this man. He just came on and he was in South Africa. And you make an interesting point because it's a confidence thing. Initially, I would, you know, what you describe as top level fluff, there would be a lot of that. But I'm finding myself now that I'm leaning a lot more into these things and I'm a lot more confident in my psychic work. But it's so true what you're saying, because with my mediumship, I fully understand that there's no way I can do that without really having a solid grasp on the psychic first, which is because it's about feeling the energy as well. You know, there's no way that I would be able to do that without it.
Of course. And there's layers within layers of energy around you, right?
Yes.
You know, when we sit in the power, we are sitting in that power not to look for information or gain information, but we are sitting there to be in the very essence, the presence of the other world without expectation or asking or looking for information. And so we are becoming into that state where we're sensing all those different energies around us and that expansion of energy around the auric field. And so to work with it psychically and understand energy a little bit around yourself and other people enhances that. And so as you start to develop with your mediumship, you will find it's normal to get what we call the top surface fluff, what Christine calls the top surface fluff.
I like it. Words, it's a good description.
Right? It's what Christine calls it. She drives a red car and she's a secretary. Whoopie-doo. Fabulous. Great if you start like that. That's where it starts. But then you have to go deeper, right? And deeper and deeper. And so you'll find that the psychic mind becomes stimulated, and that can lead to the wonderful majesty, like I said, the magic of mediumship. Not for everybody, but for most people. But I believe everybody's psychic. I just feel that they push it down or they ignore it or they don't take notice of their own intuition enough. They don't listen to their own soul language. They don't listen to their own soul language when their soul is speaking.
I think I've always, actually, I am lying a bit. I used to, I am lying a little bit, actually. Throughout most of my life, I have been very good at selfishly listening to my gut feeling and intuition. And on the times I haven't, the wheels have fell off of things in massive ways. But I think that I've always been very good at listening to that. And I do think that that's why I've been such a good psychic, is because throughout the years, because actually the funny thing about it, Christine, and I'm jumping all over the place, but I do this all the time on this podcast, I wouldn't have built my business, which is a national business now, without my psychic skills. It's just, I've only just realized that I've really got them. So I guess because a lot of people are going to be listening to this who, you know, are trying to develop their psychicness. So at the moment, I'm doing readings. I'm picking up on the top level fluff, very comfortable with that. How does one start to, you know, really, well, I guess get below the surface and really start to get the detail? Because it's funny what you say as well, because it's so true. you're not going to impress anyone by telling them they got a red car and whatever. They go, oh, okay, well, this psychic is obviously good. They can they've got some evidence. They must know what they're doing, but that's not going to help anyone. You're just stating what
That's right.
facts, aren't you, about the person?
Yeah.
How does one start to, get deeper
Get
into
to the
it?
grit. Get to the grit.
That's what I'm looking.
Get to
The funny thing is, you're on top. You're on the ball at the moment because it's evening for you. I'm sitting here at 8 a.m, so your range of vocabulary is much better than mine, I think.
Okay, so I call that, people who I teach will tell you I've got these words, and I say get to the grit. So, the grit of it is that you have to start off like that. You have to start with the smallest thing. It's the smallest seed that you have to start off with that top surface stuff, because that gives you an impetus and confidence to go forward to try something else. But then you start to, I would instruct or share with people different various things and exercises in a class state, obviously, to access the emotional levels of the person. How are they emotionally? How do they react? What are they like in certain situations? What are they feeling about them? And what is it that inspires their emotional state, and what brings their emotional state down? And the same with the mental level and the creative level of mind, the imagination. Are they imaginative? Are they creative? What stimulates them? What inspires them? What gives them movement? What makes them get up in the morning to want to do this work? So there's always something beyond the layers. And if you can think in terms of that, what else is there, with Jason? What else can I feel with Jason? There must be something else there with him. Where's his mind at the moment? What's going on? And it's like you join the dots. You follow little steps of where the information or the feeling, all the 5 psychic senses are in working order. They all get activated in this process. You don't choose to be clairvoyant or hear things or see things, because you can do that mediumistically and psychically, of course. But you don't choose that. You allow yourself to feel the energy and really become at one with this person in front of you. And as you start to become at one with the person in front of you, and it's almost like I say to my students, it's like you're drinking in their energy. And as you take that drink, what flavor is it? Is there something there that leaves a bit of taste in your mouth? Is it sweet? Is there something going on with this flavor of this person, of this energy? And what is it that's getting you to that? So it's almost like an unfolding picture. Do you understand that?
Yeah,
Almost
I do.
like
This is
an
a really good.
unfolding picture.
You're very good with your analogies, Christine. You put it in a way definitely that makes sense. I think drinking the energy is a very good.
Yeah.
It's like a very good way to put it.
And what you have to do then, Jason, is that say you work, okay, and today, say if you're going to do a practice group, okay, today I'm really going to practice working on the emotional state with people. What am I feeling? I know they've got a red car and a blue cat and, grow figs or whatever, but think, what else have I got with them? How do they respond emotionally? What are they contained? Are they expressive? Are they open? Do they hold knowledge well? Are they a seeker? Are they studious? So you sort of are looking at all these different areas that will bring you information as you're drinking in that energy and you're swallowing that drink, you're moving deeper into that energy with them. So as you're blending with them, you then can see where there might be issues or perhaps things that are obstacles for them, or indeed other things that make them really happy and joyous and exciting. So you look at you'll feel all the emotional sides of their personality and their nature. And that can be used also in their mental side, and also in their creative side. People forget about creative expression. I'm really big into creativity and mediumship and psychic work. And I think people forget about that because the faculty of the imagination is used a great deal by the spirit world because, they've got to stimulate the imagination to bring things to you sometimes if you're not picking it up directly, clairvoyantly, clairaudiently, etc. And so the imagination, that faculty of imagination works to a level, but not to the point where you're imagining things and you're off track. So as that creative aspect of you becomes stimulated, your reading becomes more stimulated with practice.
And it is practice. It
Oh,
is.
absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
getting a lot more confident at the moment now. I'm not afraid of the no as much. Now I just go for it. And the way I try to look at it now, because I think one of the biggest problems, I think, is the fear of the no or whatever. Now I just look at it as an experiment, because it takes away all of the expectation. I just think I'm experimenting. This is an experiment. What goes when you're doing a psychic reading? And I do want to come on to mediumship in a moment, but I just want to properly iron out this important part of as it says on the tin, the psychic to spirit pathway. When you're doing a psychic reading, then yourself, what's going on in Christine's mind, or is nothing? Maybe that's the clue is in the title. Nothing's going on in Christine's mind because you're in your heart and you're feeling. I don't know, but what's your process? What's happening for you when you're doing it?
You know, when you get used to doing this and you've got experience and you're doing it regular and etc., you automatically know that sensing of blending with someone. You get a feel for someone straight away. So certainly I might start off with something about, you know, what they do with their education or a job or where they are at this life at the moment. And that can come through us sensing all the colors around them and being able to, colors so important to interpret the color and to interpret it how you feel about it, not what a book tells you.
So when you say interpret the color, you're sensing a color to do with that person.
Color, say, for example, you know, you sit in front of me and I see a very deep green. I want to say, what shade of green? What's the density like? What's the saturation level of that? Are there other shades around it, etc.? If I was sensing that, because, you know, when you start to work psychically a lot, you develop your own code of understanding of what things mean to you with symbols and with colors, even though we have universal colors that we know are very as they are. There's certain colors that stand for certain things. But everybody will sense different shades and saturation of color differently. So sometimes I will sense a color without realizing it. Sometimes I will see a symbol, or usually I will hear words. And I have this knowing. I'll just know. So that claircognizance, that knowing part of my ability just fires up. Oh, you've been studying psychology, and are you leaving Australia? Because I have a feeling that you're going to move out of this country, but you'll do that once you get accreditation. Is that correct? Yes. Would I be correct that you're going to move to America? I've just seen the United States flag over your head. Would that be right? So it happens in a knowing way, right? A knowing way. So all of that might be going on around someone around you. And then they might have come to you for something a little bit deeper, or perhaps you touch on something deep within that they didn't even think they'd talk about. But it ends up being a healing aspect as well. Does that make sense? Because if you're doing psychic work for the hell of it and you're not healing, helping, or inspiring people, or helping people move forward with themselves in different areas of life, then you're not helping yourself as the medium or psychic or your client.
Well, I think what you say is true, because people aren't going to a psychic for no reason, are they? Or a medium? They're going because they've got an issue, or there's they want healing, or there's some reason or another. It was quite funny actually. The guy did the other day. I was so impressed with myself, Christine. So impressed at how I performed the other day. I didn't know anything about this man, but I sensed straight away that he was lost with relationships. And he was having, I feel proper proud of myself, because honestly, my rock confidence was rock bottom months ago, absolute rock bottom, because I just felt that I wasn't doing very well at all. But I managed to sense that this man was struggling to, get and hold a relationship, and I started leaning more and more into that, and it was funny in the way for me at the moment it just comes as a knowing. That's the way I get it. I just know. But it's funny because I have had that all my life, as I was saying. So coming on, because we could talk about the psychic for the whole hour. That, there's no lack of things to say about that, I'm sure. But I want to kind of come on to developing one's mediumship, because it's one of the most requested topics on this show, and I must get an email every single day asking for different aspects of mediumship to be covered. But let's kind of start from the beginning, and we'll kind of touch on various points as we go along. Right. So someone, well, I guess we'll talk about my mediumship because I feel that I'm at the beginning in a lot of ways. So that's probably quite a relevant place to start. So I'm now at a point where I can distinguish the difference between my energy and spirit energy. When I sit, I can tell the difference straight away. And I've noticed that my temples start throbbing when there's a spirit person around, which is a bit bizarre. But how do I get to a point then where I can do more than just sit and feel the presence of spirit? And it's not always. Sometimes when I sit, I don't feel any presence, but sometimes I do. But I still don't know whether that's because I'm just having a day where my mind is too busy or whatnot.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm a great believer. I'm really an old-fashioned medium, and I actually believe you should develop in a home circle.
A home circle?
Yeah, or a good circle.
Good circle.
I have my home circle. I've had home circles all my whole 35 years of mediumship. And the circle I have now is a group of people that started with me when I moved to Sydney 16 years ago. They've been with me 15 years and they still sit. We sat here last night, every Wednesday night, 14 of them.
Wow.
So we sit, and they've become beautiful healers and mediums and things, a couple of trance mediums, spirit portrait artists in their own right, but we come together just to sit for spirit. So the thing is, what you have to do, you have to sit. You have to have a good tutor who can help you, because the tutor has to be able to see where you're blending, where your mind is, where are you in the power. And once that power builds, you might just get a flick of something, a sense of something, or hear a word. It might be a smell or a taste, or you just know something, or even a vision. It might be very small, and you start off with that. And I think a lot of people go wrong because they expect it to be, well, I'm Jason or I'm Christine, and yes, I've passed and I was in hospital and this is where I lived and this is what I did and It doesn't work like that, because it's a world of thought. So it's working through your filters and through your perception. So if you think of all the muck in your mind, right? Let's have a look at all the
there's a lot of it, Christine.
Oh, no. Well, there's an awful lot in mine as well. But the thing is, we've all got mucky minds, right? So at the beginning, the discipline of sitting in the power, moving to be with that presence of the other world, which is the fuel. It's the fuel that pushes you to help a communicator, because that power of you helps sustain the contact, right? So if you're sitting, if you think about this, really, you have a motor car, that is you. You have to add fuel. You have to add fuel, which is your power. You are the driver of the car and the spirit world is your passenger. Use that analogy. But that car will not move without fuel. You can't drive it anywhere. So you might sense the spirit there, but you may not be able to gain communication, because depending on the level that you're at, that's why practice sitting in the power, practice a good teacher, read, understand what's taking place, but don't have an expectation that it's all going to flow automatically. That flowing happens over a natural progressive period. But if you've got somebody who's going to classes, or not going to classes and just practicing with a friend, you can be all over the place. You'll be psychic spirit, up, down, psychic spirit. And what you're looking for is to get out of that up and down movement to be in the natural flow, that lovely river of communication of the other world. But you know what, Jason? It's time, discipline, and practice. And you can't get away from the discipline.
You can't, and do you know what? It's taken me at least 8 months just to feel that I can sit and get myself to a state where my mind can switch off. It's taken me a lot of practice just to get to that stage, and it's quite funny because one of my biggest problems, I think, throughout this journey so far has been expectation. I'll sit down and I will. As soon as I get a spirit person come in, I get a bit excited. I get a bit overexcited, and one thing I noticed that I did a lot was I'd be asking a question or saying a thing, and I'd be firing off too much rather than just one thing,
Right.
sit and wait and then be patient, and I just
That's
lose the
right.
connection.
You just have to be patient. And you can express a beautiful piece of information from one clairvoyant image or from one word or feeling that you have. You don't need realms and realms of information from the other world to express something. They can give you one thing that you can explore and expand with your sense of perception and clairsentience to give a lovely piece of information. And so what happens is we get people who, it is normal, everybody gets excited at the beginning. And what happens is they start working off their own energy, especially on platforms when they get up on the platform too early, they work off their own energy and not the power of the spirit. And so their mediumship falls a bit flat after a while. It's not sustainable. So, it's a matter of...
What do you mean by that, by working on the power of themselves?
Well, if you get super excited and you woo like that, well, I mean, we all get excited. I love Deming. I love doing my work, and you do get that place of a little bit of butterflies and excitement sometimes. But if you ride off that too much without being with the presence of the power and being patient with the power and the spirit, you will be utilizing that energy of you to grasp information rather than letting the spirit world flow through your mind naturally.
Yes. Do you know what? I think another thing with my mediumship as well is expectation. It's just a killer, isn't it?
Oh, it's terrible. We all have had it. I had it. Look, I used to think everything I got was from the spirit world. And I think, oh, yes, thank you, spirit. Thank you, spirit. I look back 35 years ago and I'll go, oh my God, how wrong was I? I had to backpedal and understand and really understand it. So we all do it. It's all part of the process. It's nothing wrong with anybody doing these things. That's such a fundamental understanding we have to have, that you're not going to be brilliant or great in 6-12 months unless you're a natural born medium and you've got a really good teacher and they've guided you and boom. It's quite rare these days. So what happens is that we get excited, we run off all this energy and we think it's great and we can't wait to do the next reading or the next demonstration. But if things haven't been developed correctly, over a period of time, we will fall apart. Because it's not sustainable. Competence and confidence, they're not sustainable. It's okay to be competent with it, but you've got to hold that competence. And I feel that what we do is we make far too many demands on the spirit world. They give, we have a list of what we want them to give us. Well, forget your lists, throw it out. You don't need a list from the spirit world, because if you're sitting and developing with your power correctly, they are a higher intelligence. They know they've got to give you information about themselves. They know that you are seeking some evidential points for their loved one. They're not silly, but we are like, oh, where do you work? How did you die? What did you do? What was your address? And so it sadly, I think, takes away from the whole sacredness and the meaningfulness of spirit communication, because we should be their voice. They shouldn't have to be ours.
I think you make that's interesting in itself, because I have had to say to myself recently, Jason, you are dealing with a person. This is an actual person. And I think that a lot of the time but the whole reeling off of questions and quick fire, give me this, give me this, give me this. That's not how you would treat a person.
Right.
And
that's right.
And I think I have to remind myself that it's a person.
That's right. And I think that also, if you're in the spirit world and you want to talk to, say, one of your children, and you go to you're working through a medium, and you've got this medium's mind saying, well, tell me where you lived. What was your surname? What was your address? How many kids did you have? I mean, to me, that sort of communication and evidence is good. It's brilliant. But there needs to be something else with that, because what have they come to say? Why are they there with their loved one? What is the purpose of the communication of the other world, which we all know is to offer evidence of the afterlife, but also it's about helping us view life in the bigger picture, helping our lives here be worthy. That's why our loved ones come back, to let us know they're okay, there's another place, we'll meet them again, and that our lives here are worth living in a wonderful, joyful way when we can, even though they know the frailties of the human mind and the human world. However, when you demand or make these questions or have this dialogue in your head, well, I want this and I want that, you fall into the area of picking that information up psychically from the sitter rather than from the spirit world as well. Do you
Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish the difference, isn't it? Because sometimes I don't know if I'm getting it. Am I? You know what I'm saying? Am I actually getting it from a spirit person, or is this potentially psychic?
And that comes from understanding the presence of the other world and knowing that they're there. And
from sitting in the power.
That's right. That's right. And knowing that they're there, which is very different to psychic work. For me, feels very cold, very flat. It's just there. It's cold and flat. When I work with the other world, there's a movement within me, if I can say that. I just, and I might just be working a little bit intuitively with my client, and then all of a sudden I'm aware of someone in my room, or I'm aware of a presence next to me, but I might not have any information from that communicator straight away. It might be 5 or 10 minutes into a reading before they even say something to me. And I might hear, oh, do you know a man called Bob Smith? I feel this is your uncle. This man lets me know he's your uncle. His name is Bob Smith. And then sometimes, because I'm not looking for it or asking for it, sometimes it flows easier. And that's something we have to teach people, or people who are setting out need to understand. Don't grasp, don't chase information, don't run for it, don't follow a shopping list technique. Allow the spirit to move through you and express it, even if it's small, quality over quantity.
Everything you say, I agree with. I think that the fact that you just allow it to flow and you sit there and you just carry on and you wait for it to come. But I think sometimes I'm sitting there going, come on, please give me something, feeling the pressure. And I guess that comes with confidence, and the confidence of, okay, I'm going to start psychically, see what comes in. And actually, funny enough, when I did that reading the other day on the guy, it flowed much better for that reason. I started psychically. And I at the moment I'm in that stage, which I'm sure you've probably been in as well, where I'd say, oh, if a spirit person comes in, would you like me to make you aware of them? And he said, well, it depends who it is. And I said, well, unfortunately, I don't have if someone comes forward, they come forward. I can't, we're only having Laura come forward today, only Laura. So then we got halfway through and I did feel a presence, and it was for that reason, because it was flowing and there wasn't that, please give me something, when I'm sitting in Arthur Findlay, come on, I need a bit of evidence, please, spirit world. It's coming to me a lot easier. So I think you're right in what you're saying.
I just think be in the river of the flow rather than in the river of want.
Yes. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers in developing one's mediumship, because we all have an expectation, especially when you've paid however much to go on a course, you probably want it even more.
That's right. But the fact is, you see, and the other thing about the courses and everything, you have to look at everything as an experience, right? If you look at it as an experience rather than getting you to the next level of development or making you better, because really what it does, it's an experimentation and it's an experience that you can then go home and put those things that you've learned into practice more. That's what the college is about, right?
Yes.
So the college doesn't make mediums. We're not in the business of making a medium, because you can't make a medium. You can't even teach mediumship. You guide people with the ability to the best that you can, and their own attentiveness to what's going on within them and paying attention and understanding helps the mediumship flourish as well.
Is that because you can't teach it because it's so personal on how one person feels? And
well, not everybody has a great ability. Not everybody can play the piano, but not everybody's Liberace. Some people can play it to a good standard. Some people can go below or above the standard. So it just depends. And everybody has an off day. Even well-seasoned mediums have an off day. We're talking about something that's not tangible. We all can stuff it up. That's just part of it. I just say stuff it and flush it. Right? Get on with it. Go on to the next one. Stuff it, flush it, get on with it. Because what happens is we drive ourselves into this chaotic state of mind, of desire, of wanting to be the best medium, to get the best evidence, rather than stepping back and saying, what am I really doing? I'm really, like you're saying, communicating with a person. This is a sacred act. You're in a state of conscious engagement with someone in another world. And we sometimes can take it for granted. We've got to pay attention to that, to what's taking place, because your vocabulary is important. You're representing their love. And so you need, all of this sort of stuff comes up in your self-awareness and what you're doing. And if you've got a good tutor, that helps you come to grips with all of that.
When you was developing all those years ago, well, I guess obviously you're still developing now, what are some of the kind of biggest things that you now know that you sort of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way? So if you could go back and tell your younger self some of these lessons in your mediumship, what would it be, with the benefit of
to take more time?
So you too was trying to rush.
I think that it was I never wanted to be a medium. I was a reluctant medium. I think we discussed that in an earlier podcast. I didn't want to do it, and I had a lot of experiences. And then I was told by several very, very good mediums, brilliant mediums who just passed, who were well known at the hall and everywhere. You will do this work. When I used to go and see them demonstrate, because I used to go and see demonstrations with my dad because he was a working medium. And my dad used to say, only if you take the choice, but the ability is there. But by God, I remember doing one of my first services in England with him, and I got a beautiful contact. And then I started off the second contact. So when I got in the car going home, I was waiting for him to say, well done, Christine. I was only in my late 20s. Well done, Christine. He didn't. He said, that second contact you had was psychic. Where was your head? I'll never forget it. I never forget it. So it taught me a lesson, because what it taught me, going back to my younger years, like your question, is that not everything you get is from the spirit world. And until you understand that river of flow, we understand that we touch the psychic mind as well. The psychic mind gets interacted in that. And it's normal at the beginning to be a bit of psychic, touch a bit of spirit, psychic, touch a bit of spirit. In your development, we're encouraging and guiding you as tutors to hold that piece that you got, to build upon that, to expand that part of your mind. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does. I think one of the biggest challenges as well is being able to hold a contact. Because when I see people working on a platform, and they're going for a good hour and a half, I think to myself, how on earth are you managing to keep the audience engaged whilst keeping the contact? How does one, do that?
Well, we normally, seasoned mediums, we normally demonstrate for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours if we have to, but very rarely 2 hours. Normally it's an hour and a half by the time you talk and get everything out. The thing is, that comes with experience. All of it comes with experience. And it's knowing how to handle an audience, how to hold the power in the room, how to handle yourself and hold your own power. It's almost like there's a sense in your mediumship development where you become, and you're becoming all the time. And all of a sudden you become, and you are this medium. And so with that, your discipline, which has strengthened you and got you to that stage, with that, there's a big learning road when you start going out publicly. So going out publicly gives you as many lessons as in the development circle. Does that make sense? And you eventually learn yourself. So, holding that power for that length of time is about someone who's disciplined and can hold the power and works with the power correctly, if it's all spirit communication.
It's, do you know what? I really think that I've got a calling as a platform medium. I think that is my preferred. I think I'm just a natural performer. I just always have been, and I think I can hold a room, but I can't even imagine the thought of actually getting up on a platform one day, being up there for a prolonged period of time and being able to hold a spirit contact. But I guess it's the energy of the room as well you sort of feed off.
You need the energy of the people, but you also can, when you've got a bad audience, or and you've got a bad feeling in the room where the power doesn't seem to be flowing, you've got to be able to stand in your own power and hold your own power to be able to communicate. So that all, again, that comes with experience, Jason, and it comes with practice. And I've had times where I've done a terrible demonstration. I've fallen flat on my face and I went, what the heck? And like, my first contact might be good and the next two were rubbish. And I'm like, what's that? And it's nothing to do with the other world. It's to do with Christine. It's to do with Christine's mind, or what's happening around me. And not, especially when I first started, I started off really well and everything was good. And I remember one time I just had a couple of contacts that were good. Then the rest of it was terrible. And I think I closed after about five contacts. It was terrible. I went totally off track. It's normal. It's part of the process. Any medium who says it doesn't happen is lying. We all have these days where you bomb, where it just doesn't fit right for you. But the key is to get back on the horse and understand and review why, and get out there and do it again. And that's the hard bit, because your confidence gets neck. It goes right out the window. So as the confidence goes, you go, oh my God. And then, the next time you get up, you've got butterflies, But the spirit world will more than meet you halfway if you endeavor to keep working and keep learning and get back to the disciplines.
I think you're right. There's been times over the last few months where I have literally felt like, I'm so low confidence and feeling down about it, because I've just thought to myself, I can't feel the presence. I can't do this. But I just can't stop coming back to it. I just feel being pulled back to it all the time.
Yeah, it just drives you. It drives you.
It does. And I think I'm very stubborn in nature. The harder something is, the more I want it, I think. So it doesn't surprise me why I keep coming back to it. I guess kind of on a closing note then, you mentioned on the times where it doesn't go right. I guess we've talked a lot about how to develop and how to do the right things, but what are some of the major pitfalls that stop people from being able to connect? And I want to weave in one other aspect into this question as well. We mentioned before we started recording Simon James and his book, Magician to Mystic. He talks a lot about, what it takes to actually be the mystic, how one has to change their relationship with a lot of things. I guess I wanted to weave an aspect of that into this as well, to make this more human and personal. So I guess the ultimate question, I'm going around the houses in the question now, Christine.
Well,
what is it that what are the common pitfalls? What is it that people have to kind of look at within their own life if they really want to take their mediumship to the next level?
I think there's self at a really deep level. I feel also why they want to become the medium, and really, really be raw truth about yourself of why you want to do it, and understand that it's not entertainment. It's not just to get up and get a link and be fantastic because you've got great evidence. There's a wondrous relationship with your own soul, with the divine. And what I mean by that, because you hear these words bantered around a lot, is that it's about your own personal, individual, perhaps it's an inner dialogue, but that inner side of your heart and your mind that is linked to something greater than you are, that always has been there, and your absolute intrinsic link to that. And so with that, when you understand that what we do has been around for eons of years, it is ancient, It's not modern day. Is that right? Am I just doing this because I can do it? Or am I really working with the truth of my own soul and heart and understanding that I have something very sacred going on within me when I'm in that relationship with the divine? And you hear people say, well, I don't believe in God and God, but God is the source, God is the power, God is the spirit. You know, whichever way you want to express that, you can't get away from that, because one of the things you have to recognize when you start developing true mediumship, you cannot get away from yourself.
Yes, I agree with that. You are the vessel, aren't you?
Have I discombobulated you?
No. Do you know what? Everything you're saying makes total sense. And I think only recently I'm at a place where just all of the dots have started connecting for me recently. A lot of things are just making sense. And I think I'm at a really exciting crossroads as well, where I've had to look at a lot of things in my life, and mediumship, honestly, has put more of a spotlight on a lot of areas of my life than I ever thought as well. I think that my relationships with not just people, but just things in life, it's put a spotlight on. And actually, when I read that Simon James's book, it really made me think, Jason, you know, if you're going to actually be a medium, that, you know, it's a really hard journey. And I actually did a YouTube video about it the other day where I just thought it's not easy, because it really does put a spotlight on things. And the way I had to process it in my mind is, am I willing to completely surrender and you know, commit myself to this path if I want to be on it? But the problem, when I asked myself that question, I thought, well, can I not be on it? Well, no, now I know about it and know it's a thing, and completely believe in it. Can I turn my back on that when I think that is my true calling? Well, no, you know, I've been in my own head a lot about this, as you can probably tell, Christine.
But that's also, but I really applaud that, because that's really self-awareness, right? And it's about, you know, we have mediums who have a great faculty and they can work brilliantly, and then we have spiritual mediums. Is this a spiritual path for you? Are you looking at the word spiritual, spirit, spirituality,
Yes.
really through rose-colored glasses, or are you taking your glasses off and really looking at it? Because everything about it is about us, and it's about the journey of self at a deeper level and understanding. And it's also about understanding that divine aspect that we link to when we work with the other world. That's a mantle of responsibility and major responsibility. We talk to dead people, if you say it that way, even though we know they're not dead, but they are somebody's loved one.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have great respect. And I also endeavor as best I can to have grace with when I do that. Because, you know, when I pop my clogs, I want a good medium to come back to my family. So the thing is, I think that you have to be gracious and respectful, but I think you have to be very open to look into your own heart, your own soul, to see what really drives you, and understand the drive, and understand when you're reading all these things, is this for me? You don't have to be holier than thou. I'm not holier than thou. Oh my God, never. But I'm real. But what this has done for me, I know I cannot escape self. And I know when I have made a mistake, I've cocked up, said something, done something, acted that way. When I cock that up, I go, right, Christine, you know, you've stuffed that up. You came across that way, or were you doing that? Have a look at that. And if you can be really rawly honest instead of whitewashing things with yourself, you're also on that journey of discovering more about yourself.
Well, I'm very honest with myself now. I know straight away when I've been an idiot, and I hold my hands up to it. Christine, I think this has been an amazing conversation. I think we've covered so much ground. We really have done a whistle-stop tour from the beginning of becoming a psychic right through to developing one's mediumship. And I think there's so many pearls of wisdom in this conversation, and people will have loved it. So just leaves me to say thank you for coming on to the Soul Sync again.
Thank you for having me.